happy to be, and they're very happy to meet junior people in particular. So keep that in mind when you are thinking about networking. Conferences, you can also, instead of just attending, you can organize sessions. Organize sessions around a topic that's of interest to you so that you can invite people you would like to meet, right? That's a great way to meet people. If you're not, someone hasn't reached out to you to be part of a session, you can still reach out to them to be a part of a session. It's a little more work on your part. You have to do the organizing. But that's another way. And usually people, particularly at the big conferences that many people are planning on attending anyway, they're more than happy to add another session. If people ask you to discuss papers, definitely say yes. That's a great way to meet people. Again, it's a little bit more work on your part, but it's a great way to meet all the people in that session, and especially the author of the paper that you'll be discussing. Seminars. These are just sort of more general seminars that banks put on, or institutes, or research departments, or academic units. They put on various weekly seminars. If you are part of an institution that has a weekly seminar, invite people. The way it works at many institutions, mine included, is there's usually 1 or 2 faculty members that's responsible for organizing the session every semester. You can either ask to be that person, or you can find out who that person is and tell them, oh, I'd really like to see so-and-so. And you can come up with a wish list of people you'd really like to meet and make sure they are invited to your weekly or monthly seminar, whatever you have. Now that we've gone virtual in so many of our meetings and seminars, it's much cheaper to invite people to come and present at your institution. So if there are people in, on another continent that you would really like to meet, but you know that it's a very long trip and the person may or may not be able to make it, a virtual seminar is a great alternative. And people rarely, I think, turn down virtual invitations because they are so low cost from their perspective. So I participated in something last year that I thought was a really great idea. So the junior faculty at UCLA in Applied Micro each one was sort of organizing a mini conference on a topic of their interest. And for the mini conference, what they did was they invited 2 or 3 sort of senior people and some discussants, and then themselves and maybe 1 other junior person. And so when you have kind of a couple of senior folks, it just makes it easier to sort of organize it and get people to buy in. So you can say, oh, to senior person A, I've invited senior person B to be part of this conference. We'd really like to include you too. The whole thing is, 4 hours, it's virtual. It's all on one kind of coherent topic. And it's an opportunity for you to not only meet more senior folks in your field, but also present your own work to them. So I thought that was a really nice idea for more junior scholars. And I thought it worked really well. I really very much enjoyed my visit on that day. I thought it was a great idea. I got to meet some really interesting junior faculty who I didn't know before. And I also got to socialize with some senior faculty who I already know and like very much. So I thought it was really sort of a win-win. Another way to just sort of get yourself known is, of course, to actively participate in seminars. And I just want to be clear that that doesn't mean showing that you're the smartest person in the room. That's not necessary. I think a much better way to think about participating actively in seminars is to provide feedback on papers that's really constructive, right? And not, not anything else. So I think when you go and give a seminar, you're really interested in receiving feedback and really appreciative and grateful for people who make comments that really help to make the paper better, rather than comments to just sort of make the point that they're very smart. So everyone's very smart and it's great, but I think you really make much more of a positive impact in a seminar setting when you are thoughtful and provide feedback that's helpful. Finally, on the issue of seminars, this is not something I've done myself, but I know many people who have. And that's just because I think I'm a little too shy. But many people I know invite themselves to give a paper. If you want to go somewhere, and especially if you're already traveling nearby, so that it's not very costly either for you or the seminar host, you can invite yourself to give a paper. You could say, hey, I'm going to be in city so-and-so in November. If you have an open seminar slot, I'd love to give a talk. And this apparently works quite well. And even if it doesn't work, it's very low cost. And they may say, well, actually, we don't have any openings at that time, but let me put you on the list for next year. I think my final point is, I don't know if you guys are aware, the American Economic Association has something called CSWEP, which is the Committee on the Status of Women in the Economics Profession. And for many years, they have had a mentorship program. And you have to apply, you apply and they randomly select people, junior people, to participate in the mentoring workshop. And then they have a bunch of senior faculty, I think they're always women, who act as mentors. And they've done studies, because it's a nice randomization, you just randomly selected for participation or not. And they find that women who participate because they were selected in the lottery end up being a lot more productive than women who applied but didn't get in. And they, do some work trying to understand why that is. And they think a big part of it is not the relationship that you develop with your mentor so much as the relationship that you develop with your fellow mentees. So the way that program is set up, you typically have one senior mentor with 4 or 5 junior mentees rather. And what they find is just as important as the mentor relationship is the relationship that the mentees make with each other. So the point of this is really networking is not just about meeting more senior scholars in your area. It's also about making relationships and connections with more junior scholars in your field. That can be a very, very useful thing. They can become co-authors. More generally, they're sort of sources of support. They're friends that you meet up with when you go to these conferences. So that just kind of makes it more fun. So I would just sort of encourage you to think about networking as not just sort of reaching out and making connections with senior scholars, but also the importance of making connections with junior scholars. Again, because not only is that a nice source of, kind of personal support, but these folks can often turn into important co-authors. And it's always nice to have a collection of strong co-authors. So I think that's really all I have to say in terms of prepared remarks. I don't know if there are any questions or comments. If there are other folks that also want to share some tips on networking, this would be a good time to do so. Anybody there? Mauricio, do you have ideas?
Yeah, I do have a few, and they're, I think, just kind of like extensions of most of what you covered. So I think there are a few PhD students here in the audience. So something that at least I, as a PhD student, found that was very useful for networking is always having lunch with the speaker for the seminar series that you kind of follow in your institution. It's a great way to get used to talking about research, which you have to do in the job market and kind of have your skill prepared, but it's also a great way to meet people. And I was surprised, like these people kind of remember me down the line when I was actually in the job market a few years later. They like seek me to do referee reports, which was a good practice to do referee reports. So this was a great way to network. And it's just an extension of essentially inviting people for the seminar. So when you're a PhD student, you might not have that power, but you can still, the seminar series tends to be pretty good, probably in the institution that you're going to for your PhD, and meeting these people is just an extension of that. So I think just a comment that I think a lot of people aren't aware, at least at the beginning of their career, is that the MBR conference are open for non-EMBR members, which is what a lot of people tend to think as like the mecca of networking in economics. So you can submit papers, and I mean, the Summer Institute tends to be like the most precious one, but even then, you might want to give it a shot. And the spring and the fall meetings are not as competitive. They're still very competitive, but it might be a little bit easier to get a paper in, and they're still attended by the who's who in probably in that whatever theme you're talking about. So just something else to keep in mind. I think one other thing is just like the AI has that community for sorry if I always forget, the status of women in the economic profession, and the mentoring program. I think there's a few other kind of like just kind of self-organized mentor-mentee kind of things going around. If you guys are on Twitter, I think Nishtit has been organizing this thing called AIM, where he has been pairing. I'm part of it. That's why I know kind of like, a very senior person, like a junior and then a PhD student. And it has been, I think it's just what Anna said, it's not really as much as the relationship you're building between mentor and mentee. Is like you get to meet other people and kind of network, and people that are working on similar topics, and that kind of stuff. And then in case anyone here is at an institution like mine, which is a little bit out of the conference circuit, so sometimes it might be a little bit harder to get people to come. Something that I have found personally that it's easier is you can pool resources with other institutions in the area. And we have brought a lot of, I mean, bringing people to Mexico from the US is not that hard, but bringing people from Europe is a little bit more expensive and more costly for the institution, but also for someone traveling, 8 hours or something to give a seminar. So what we usually do, and Jorge can attest to this, is we coordinate, and then we have, we organize like a few talks in the area. And that way it's more like, it's worth a trip for the person, because they're giving like 3 or 4 seminars that you help them organize. You don't organize all of them, but you organize one institution and then you coordinate with other institutions, and that really helps. So we have brought people from Europe that way, and it has been great. And then I think just one comment that I personally have found very useful is when you are in a seminar, and this works as a PhD student, try to kind of write like a question. And as Anna was saying, try to be constructive with what you build. People will remember non-constructive feedback, and that's not the kind of networking that you wanna build. And then you can just share it in private. So I am a kind of shy person as well, so I don't tend to do a lot of comments in seminars, but I usually write an email to people afterwards the seminar, and they just kind of say, oh, I think this was a great presentation. I have the following comments, or if I read the paper, then something about maybe some literature that they could cite, or some other things that they could try and whatnot. And people tend to be very, very grateful of those, because it shows that you're taking their work seriously, and then they'll remember this down the line. So I don't know, those were just kind of some additional remarks that I think we're just building on what you said, Anna. And again, yeah, now, if anyone else has other comments or questions that you want to direct to Anna, or I guess.
I'm just going to tell one anecdote, which I just remembered as you were speaking. My brother-in-law, who's also an economist, this was many years ago, he was, I think, just out of graduate school, and he went to a conference and there was a dinner and he was late to the dinner. And so like everybody was sitting at one main table and there was a little table kind of off to the side. And there was no room for him at the big table. So he sat at the little table by himself. And then Jean Tirole showed up. And the only place for him to sit was at the little table with my brother-in-law. So he had a whole meal just with him and Jean Tirole. So
That sounds great.
sometimes you get super lucky like that. It's just, it's a bit of luck. But sometimes you just end up going to a conference and end up spending an hour talking to basically someone you've read about, for years, never imagined you'd actually meet one of these days. So I don't know, some great things can happen. And I should say, he also said he was incredibly nice.
As Anna said, if 99% of people are nice, are very, very nice, and they're happy to talk to you, and they're happy to meet younger people, and in my experience, and interact with you, and kind of learn what you're doing. And if you guys are on Twitter, something that I have done in the past is just said, hey, I followed your Twitter and I think your work is great. Do you want to go and grab a beer? And it usually kind of goes from there in a conference, and then you actually meet someone, and it's meant to be a very nice interaction. So with that, if anyone has comments, questions, other suggestions on how to network, things that have worked for you, I think we're open to all sorts of ideas, questions, comments.
Just unmute yourself if you want to say anything.
Oh, yeah, Omer, go ahead.
Okay, let me kind of take advantage. So I think like one of the things that has been great in the last year is Zoom invitation. I think that people should just take advantage of this, especially if you are kind of like in a low resource university in a developing country and things like that. It is difficult to get people to come. Also, I mean, I've been one of those that has been pushing to actually keep things on Zoom and keeping things hybrid, because especially women and other minorities tend to have more difficulty presenting. And so I think like it creates a two-way gain there. And this helps, for example, that even you guys see that not only to invite other people, but actually that you can get invited more easily. And so I think that that's something that we should not disregard. That's a major change. And one can even start thinking about things like getting together to talk about a paper and having a cup of coffee on Zoom, which I think is, again, kind of a networking thing. It's difficult to get to know immediately the people as such, but in general, I mean, we do all have kind of the bad rap that economists are ugly and terrible people. But my experience is that in general, most people are super nice, super open, and they want to help, especially young people who are coming up, young people who are like in not top universities and such like that. And so I think that's really important to have in account. Don't be scared of going up to anyone. I mean, I remember I was an undergrad back in Colombia when I met Mondel, and I was always impressed. I remember like you had like some of these hotshot economists in Colombia that would always treat people badly, but this was a Nobel Prize winner, and he was the nicest person I ever met in the econ circuit, right? And so you should not be scared, really. Most people are very, very nice. They always want to try to help you. So I think that the two things is contact people, ask them, invite them. Now it's very, very cheap to actually do this, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, those are great points. Any questions people have? Have people tried networking? Has it worked?
Hi, I will go more with a question. I'm on the shy side, and one of the things that it feels a little bit weird. It's like, this moment when the sessions end in the conference and everyone's kind of getting together for lunch or whatever, like the whole way approaching someone it feels very daunting to me, kind of like, and I always do it super awkwardly, or like, and people tend to be super nice about it, but that feels like kind of like the more challenging thing for me. Like once you start a conversation, it's kind of like easy to keep going, but like this starting of like, hi, I read your paper, or like, or you know what I mean? Like this kind of like very awkward moment to kind of try or try to, the thing that has worked for me, and I don't know if like people have tried this, usually, well, I'm on the shyer side. So most of the people I know, they tend to be better about this than I do. So usually what I try to do is like wait a little bit and see people start forming groups. If I know someone that is already in a group, so I go say hi and then just awkwardly stay standing around until I start talking. But I don't know if like you have suggestions on how to do that like a little bit more properly or less awkwardly.
So, I mean, yes, I agree with you that that is always a little bit tough and awkward for everybody, almost everybody. I'll just say this, everybody loves a compliment. So if you just go up to so-and-so and say, I really liked your paper. I thought it was so interesting how you did X, Y, and Z. That's a great icebreaker because everybody loves to hear that. So that's one way to just sort of start things, is just to compliment them on their paper. You don't, I mean, if you've just seen them present, it's a very easy thing to do. So, and people get that these are hard things to sort of break into. And so I think most people are very receptive to someone who tries to start a conversation. And, sometimes you just gotta swallow, just go for it. And start with a compliment. If you can't think of how else to do it, just start with a compliment.
You said, I think just saying, I just read your paper, I'm like, wait, someone read my paper? Like, I'm not the only person that is reading these words.
Yeah, I mean, again, if you've just been to a session and someone presented their paper, that's a very easy thing to say, I like, and then mention something that you particularly liked about the paper. There was just a little chat in there, like, you don't want to be disingenuous. Felipe, you want to speak?
Sorry, no, I was going to say the same. I just saw the chat as well, and I think I absolutely agree with what Felipe is bringing up, which I think you kind of need to mean it. So ideally, you have read the paper before, you have like a concrete question. People are also good at, they know their paper, right? Like kind of cutting through the bullshit and realizing whether you actually have like, have read the paper, at least the introduction or something along those lines, and whether, so it'd be good if your work relates and then you can ask questions. And I mean, I'm sure there are, for like most cases, this is the case. So it's not very hard, but you, as Anna said, you also have to put some in the work, which means kind of reading the paper beforehand, at least.
So the only thing that I will say, Anna, is I really like your comment about participating in conference. Again, there are two issues there. For a person who is not a native speaker in English, it's very difficult to formulate a question in real time. And MBR, for instance, is a conference that the level of the intellectual level is so high that if you think 2 minutes, you are already late. So the strategy that usually I will do is I will look at the program and I will pick up 3 papers. And I will really study those 3 papers and really seriously think about the issues. And in the right moment, you always can have questions. And in the right moment, ask the question that you already have in your mind. So that's a strategy that is very simple, but it requires effort from you before the conference. To arrive to a conference and to listen to someone and to have a smart question is a technique that is sometimes some of us have it, some of us doesn't. But if you read the paper beforehand, you can formulate something. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Felipe. That's very useful. And I think related to that is something that I said before. And it's partly has to do with my personality. I think you write in emails afterwards if you have questions that you maybe thought during the seminar, but you just have like a hard time formulating in the right way or concrete in English or something. I think just writing an email to whoever it is, it might be like someone really famous. I think they appreciate comments. So.
Hi, I'm sorry. I don't know. I arrived late, so I don't really know what you're talking about. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Hi, Anna. But it seems to me that I mean, I found co-authors in conferences that not necessarily want to reach the keynote speaker and talk only to the keynote speaker. I think conferences are for other purposes as well. And like I said, I mean, I had papers started in the coffee breaks or yeah, I was going to say dinners, but I don't think so. I don't think dinners are for those, are more for socializing, I guess. But so I'm sorry if I'm saying something that doesn't make sense. I didn't know what this session was about, and I entered half an hour late, and I've realized that people are commenting on how to speak to very famous people. But I just wanted to make this point. I don't know if it's inadequate. Please disregard it. Thank you.
That's a great point. That's a really great point. Right.
Actually, I wanted to. I was going to say something similar because it seemed like the whole dynamic was about getting in connection with someone who presented. But I mean, 95% of the people in the conference or anything are not presenting, and you should really, and that perhaps maybe a little bit more informal and more relaxed to talk to the person who's sitting next to you or in line for coffee or something like this, right? And also, again, I guess it depends on if you know that this is a very famous person. I guess that can be even more scary. But just take your chance. I mean, I've never had a co-authorship come out of conference, but I have a lot of friends and people I know that are in the area, and we keep in contacts and we see each other in every conference, and that makes it nice. I mean, it's not only about creating new collaborations, but in the end, they are people who can comment on your papers. You will be commenting on them, on theirs, and so it's. I want to say that networking has this sound of being very functional, like trying to create connections to go up. But I think it's more about being social and taking advantage, learning to meet with other people and stuff like that. So I think Matilda's point is very, very good.
Yeah.
I think that's a great point. And I think just like two branches of that is like, one, as you said, is just a part of it is having fun, right? Like we are lucky to be in a job that most of us really enjoy, and you kind of have fun after the end of the conference with beers and actually, kind of have a good time. And I think another point that I didn't realize, like until I think later in my career, is that kind of your niche in what you work is much smaller than you think. So just kind of meeting people, even if they will become your closest friend, but you can ask them about a paper, or maybe they just remember your name. They, chances that they will be a referee for something that you work on later on the line are very high. And then just, we are all humans. So as you remember, oh, this was a nice person, you might read the paper with like a different eyes when you're refereeing, and that might help in this uber weird black box that is the referee process.
Right.
I would like to say something. Hello, thank you for the space. So I heard that using Twitter and social networks may be effective also, to create new networks, to start co-authorships and all that. Do you have any recommendations as how to do these more effectively? Because I'm an introvert. It's not easy for me to approach someone in person, and even in social networks, like internet is not like an easy wall to break either. So do you have any special recommendations on how to best approach this? Because, you have to offer something in order to establish, a potential co-authorship. So how do you approach those conversations usually when you want to start something on social networks? Because, during COVID, it has been really hard to do in-person conferences and all that. Mhm.
Mauricio, you seem to know more about.
Well, so I haven't never started a co-authorship on Twitter.
Mhm.
I'm guessing some people have, but I do think that it's a good way to know what people are working on and to let other people know what you are working on.
Mhm.
So, kind of like posting your working papers as you have them, or even your published paper as you have them. And then I kind of, when other people publish working papers and they are kind of related to my topic, I tend to read them, and then you can just tweet something like, oh, this is really interesting. I'm working on something similar. I'll send you an email or something. Or this happened to me with a couple of people that I haven't met. Sometimes people will post something like, oh, I have a question, or I'm looking for a data set, or I'm looking for a paper that does this and that. And then I have emailed them. Personally, I've never met this person before, and just said, I looked at your Twitter post. I noticed that you were looking for this data set. I happen to be having this data set sitting in my computer. Here it is. Or I happen to know of a working paper, it might not be mine, related to what you were asking. And I think, again, people appreciate this. You have taken the time and you have created a connection. It might not be the closest one, but next time you see this person at a conference, you can just say, hey, we have met on Twitter. I'm Joanna. I'm the one that sent you this paper or something. And that's a way to get, you already have a connection.
Okay.
So I think that's a great way. People put like really all sorts of questions on Econ Twitter all the time. Like, how do I cluster my standard errors when I have, so and so, and then someone will be like, oh, Susan Athey wrote a paper about this. It does have to be Susan Athey, but you're providing like a useful resource for this person and
Mhm.
down the line.
Okay. Thank you.
If someone else is more like Twitter intense, then feel free to add stuff. We should have Rachel Niger here too.
I have a follow-up question on Joanna's question. By the way, my name is Lena. I'm a job market candidate this year from Georgetown University. Earlier this morning, afternoon, I presented my job market paper at this conference. It's a great experience. The pandemic kind of changed the way that the selection process for job market in a way. It seems like some people, they choose to use social media to promote their profile, and some is successful, while it's not true for all. So I'm from the supply side, and I want to hear some of you who are from the demand side to see what are the some tips that you would like to give to job market candidate to kind of success in the job market. For example, someone was saying like, make video, post it on your personal website. Someone was like, do more tweets. But I would like to have your opinions on this.
Well, I can't speak for any institution other than my own. And here, I don't think our recruitment really depends at all on social media presence certainly not at the junior level. So from our perspective, for our department, that wouldn't matter at all. But maybe others have other experiences. I mean, it's not a bad idea, to force yourself to make a video in which you have to explain your job market paper in 1 minute, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. I mean, that's not bad practice generally, because that's what you'll have to do in the recruitment process. But I don't know that social media presence has any bearing on your prospects for getting a job at this level. But I'm speaking only from my institution, and maybe there are others that have other experiences or perspectives.
I think like Anna, just speaking again from my institution as well, I agree with you. Here it doesn't really play a major, I don't think it plays any factor. I mean, I will say the one factor that it might play is I work at an institution where, not everyone will consider applying because maybe they just don't know even where ITAM is located in the map. So if I see a job market candidate on Twitter and I like their paper, then I might write them an email and say, oh, I really like your paper. You should consider applying to ITAM. But it kind of works more because I, as a person, I'm not even part of the hiring committee, but I just write and say, I'll be interested in you maybe becoming a colleague, if, potentially. So that's, I think, the advantage is that you might kind of get these emails from people that might find your work interesting. But I agree with Anna that I think in few institutions, presence itself will play a role. It's just that you're putting yourself out there, and then, but if you apply to all jobs, potentially, to the universal jobs, then I don't think it'll make a difference. Really.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, and again, I'm in a completely different range, right? I think that here we're covering like top 20, top 50, and place outside. We don't look at this at all, right? And no one will take the time to search for your Twitter and see if you have a video of your job market explaining the paper, right? And everything really has to do more with your letters, your job market package in general. And so, as Anna said, it may be a good, and actually maybe a very good practice to see yourself explaining something, right? And in a sense, I tell my students, go explain it to your grandma. If she understands your 1-minute pitch, then you're doing things correctly, and then you can go and talk to economists, right? So I really wouldn't, if I have to choose between improving my abstract and my intro versus writing the like stuff on Twitter and doing a video, I think I would spend the time on improving the abstract and the intro as much as I can. That's what really people are going to pay attention to. And indeed, as Mauricio said, you may end up telling people, come on, apply to a job here, right? Let's say in places that are not top places, what we tend to convince people to apply to our jobs, because that's the only way we can actually look at their packages, right? And so.
Yeah, I would like to add another thing. I went to the market in the last market that was normal, if you want. And I think that the couple of things that happened when everything went virtual, like being on their side of the institutions, suddenly we have way more interviews because they are not that restricted to the space, and we are also in Latin America, and also it's not that expensive to bring people to fly out. I remember like we used to do this thing of like, I remember my fly out was a little bit later than it would have been because El Rosario and Los Andes were trying to coordinate to share costs to be able to have more people. Like, so none of that is happening. So the downside is like it's more likely that you will have more interviews and more flyouts that you will have otherwise in normal times because the cost is relatively lower. The downside of that, I feel, is there are a lot of small interactions one-to-one with people from not just from the committee, but with our professors, because at the end, everyone, if you like someone that you may want to be a colleague, you may say something, even if you are not in the hiring committee. Those things are gone. So I think that what I would do, and if you may want to use trying to make a video and rewatching yourself as a tool, the spiel need to be way better and like trying to prepare for the interviews and things you will do, because from the other side, you are seeing so many people and you are having so many flyouts. We even had ones like 2 on the same day, just because this structure of cost has changed. And one thing that I will say, like also, one of the best advice that I had about how to, in this process, have like, if you will have to describe your research to a random person in an elevator in like 3 stores right, so like 40 seconds, what would you say? And that seems like a very weird, so for mine is, for instance, I study of what people do when the government is not looking, but then I have kind of used that phrase to start other conversations. So I think that like having fast answers like that to questions that you may be asked on the interviews may be better And the other thing about language is, in general, especially for non-native speakers, we have this struggle that it is true that people will, in a general sense, it's difficult to see how well articulated it was someone versus how clever is that person. So usually make that distinction is easier for someone that is already working in a second language. It's not that easy for someone that, you know, you're American and you did your PhD in the US and you work in English. That is a little bit more difficult, but I will worry more about that when you are writing than when you are actually talking. I mean, all of us, we tend to be used to accents and things like that. I will really go through like my answers to the job market. And this is something that I did like a couple of months before the market. I start working with an English tutor to try to avoid words that they're very difficult for me to pronounce. So like those, because what tends to happen in the market that I don't think that happened that much in the profession, like in general, it is like if there is a word, the time is too short. So if there is something that you as a listener don't understand, that the speaker may lose that person. So I think that more work on that, like instead of trying on social media, we'll work more in like trying to work on the things that I will be repeating and make sure that there are not things that sound weird there, that I'm not using words that are difficult for me to pronounce and those things. Like, just because now being on the other side, you receive so much more information. So it could be a little bit overwhelming. Yeah.
Thank you all for your tips. Oh, Camille had something.
Sorry. Hi, everyone. And I want to say thank you to the organizers for sharing this space, which has been really useful for all of us. I would like to share a small part of my experience and at the same time to bring a topic to the table that probably has been mentioned, but not explicitly, and it's all about expectation. I mean, when you are younger, in younger stages, like in the middle of your PhD or even before, or just beginning, considering going to the job market at all, probably you go to your first big conferences and you may have the expectation, oh my God, I'm going to meet everybody, these famous people, this and that. And then you see that I'm not saying that it's difficult, but probably it's not that easy because, you know, there's a lot of people in a conference, people are busy, talking a lot of other people. And in the meantime, you are a little bit of shy, you know, it takes more time to hone those skills to communicate better with people. And from my own experience, what I learned is like, in the end, it's like, as we always say in almost everything in economics, this is like running a marathon instead of running the 100-meter dash race, in the sense that the first time you go to a big event or you start meeting people, probably don't expect the next day to have a list of co-authors or a huge network, but you need to start it, right? You need to start from zero, then to the first step, the second one, and so on. And then when time passes by, you start to realize that, well, in the end, I have met some people that some of them have read my papers and have provided me useful comments. Some of them that they usually see my presentations in different conferences and they provide me good comments. And probably one or two they have become my co-authors after some time. So my experience is like, it's important to keep the expectation that this is like a long run, a race, instead of running 100 meters. So I would like to ask you, for some of you, what is the way you can deal with those expectations that this is in the end a long term, a long run thing that is building from block to block? Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. There's it is a long process. And, you know, the first conference you go to is you're going to be a little bit shy and you really won't know anybody, but you'll meet a couple. And then the next conference, you'll know that couple, and then you'll meet a couple more, and you just kind of keep adding to your network. So I think that's right, that your expectations should reflect sort of that more gradual approach to meeting people and growing a network. But it is the case that as you just do this more and more, you become closer with the people that you met long ago, and you continue to meet new people. So you should be thinking about each conference as just sort of a small marginal increase in your network, and not have sort of these huge expectations that you're going to go to a conference and come away with, a whole bunch of new co-authors and stuff like that. It is a much more gradual process. Anything else? Any other questions? Comments?
And if I may, just to a little bit more on the demand side, I think that if you're very good at doing a video, then it might be useful. But if not, it might actually work against you. I mean, I've been on the hiring side, so I've watched a few of these videos, and not all of them are great, and that can actually not be a very good, because you're still a little bit green when you do the video, so you haven't gone through the interviews, you haven't gone through all the process. So, but I've also watched great videos. So I mean.
Thank you so much for this very fresh experience.
Great. Well, maybe we have like 5 minutes left. Oh, sorry. You had someone had a question? I don't know if it's me, but
Can you hear?
Trouble. Oh, there you go. I think maybe. Unsure. Okay, I think some hardware problem there.
Perhaps if you cut the video, it can work.
Yeah, Giovanna tried to close the video. It worked for me at other occasions.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, much better.
Okay, sorry. I think it's because of the video. So no, I just want to thank you for organizing it. And I'm a second year PhD student, and actually I will try to follow your tips. And in particular, I actually like out your work, and especially Anna related with domestic violence, which is my main topic of interest. So I just like to thank you, and thanks for the tips, because I'm beginning actually, and it will be actually very important for me. So just thank you.
Great. It's nice to meet you. See, your first networking.
Yeah, and with Anna, it's a good networking. Yeah, thanks, Anna.
Yeah.
Great. So, well, we have, I don't know, 6 minutes left. I don't know if it's enough to go for a week round of introductions, just so that everyone knows what everyone is working on, and then later maybe you can reach out over email. So we can just keep it to like a 10-second introduction. I guess I can start. So I'm Mauricio Romero. I work at ITAM in Mexico City, but I'm originally from Colombia, and I mostly work on education in developing countries. I'll call names. Camilo.
Thank you, Mauricio. I'm Camilo Jorquez. I'm a junior researcher in agricultural economics and the central bank in Colombia, located in the city of Cali, in one of the regional research centers. And most of my research is centered on agricultural economics, rural development, and also climate change. And thank you again for this opportunity.
Andrea?
Andrea Lopez, I am the University of Rosario. I mostly do public economics, tax evasion, a little bit of crime.
Super. Matilde?
Hi, I'm Matilde Machado. I work at the Universidad Carlos III de Madrid. I've been around, so I've worked in health economics, I guess mostly. I'm now working on teen pregnancy in Latin America. Actually, I have some papers on child penalty and on some labor issues, also economic history. Sorry, too much, but applied work mostly. Thanks.
Great. Felipe?
Hi, I'm Felipe Barrera. I work at Vanderbilt and I work in economics of education in developing countries.
Omer?
Hi, I'm Omer Ozak. I'm an associate professor at SMU, and I work on comparative development, long-run growth, and cultural economics.
Super, thanks. Lina?
Hey again, Lina. Hi from Washington, D.C. I'm at Georgetown University. My dissertation studies monetary policy from heterogeneity and employment. Thank you.
Great. Don Won?
Hello, nice to meet you all. Thanks, Mauricio and Dana, organizing this session. I really enjoyed. I'm a assistant professor at the UC Riverside, and I work on international finance, mostly international reserve management and the impact of commodity prices on the macroeconomy in general, and also some finance stuff like international financial integration and this impact on the portfolio allocation stuff.
Great. Joanna?
Sorry. So hi, Joanna Fajardo Gonzalez. I'm an economist at the United Nations Development Program. I'm located in Washington, D.C. for those who are around here. My interests are in development, particularly gender, labor, and education. As I also have worked on domestic violence in Colombia. I'm going to share.
Oh, I think you want to mute.
Well, I don't know how I did that, but sorry.
There you go.
I was saying that I was going to share what I just shared, my email, if you want to get in contact with me. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Giovanna?
Yeah, hi. So great to know about it, as I told you. And I am a PhD student at INSPER in Brazil. And my main topic of interest is gender violence, especially domestic violence and how it affects children. So I'm so glad to also know about Joanna, and we can talk about it. So thanks.
Great. Cesar?
Hello. Well, my name is Cesar. I'm a PhD student at Boston University, and my research is I work at the intersection of labor and urban economics, and right now I'm working mostly on gender issues and urban.
Great, thanks. Mario?
Good afternoon. Do you hear me?
I think that some connections issue there, Mario.
Hi, do you hear me?
Yeah, there you go.
All right, so my name is Alejandro Nieves. I work as a young researcher here at the Rosario University. So my work is as a research assistant. I'm doing my master, and my thesis is about migration and productivity. So I heard today very valuable papers and discussions about my topics, but also I would like to study urban economics. I think is the field I like more, but this kind of talks are very useful for me because I have to figure out what to do next, but not also what, but how I will do to apply for a PhD or whatever paths I chose.
Great, thanks, Mario. Andres Felipe.
Hi, everybody. My name is Andres Garcia. I'm professor at Universidad del Rosario. I'm very happy to see some very familiar faces. Hi, Matilde. And I work in labor economics, mostly in topics related with informality. And also currently I'm working some projects about gender gaps in the labor market.
Great. Thanks. Juliet?
Yes. Hi, everyone. Good to see some familiar faces. I'm currently working with the digital government cluster at the IDB. And what I do basically is to do research on how governments can improve citizen services and how can it boost productivity of civil servants through the use of technology. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Aurora?
Hi, my name is Aurora. Nice to see familiar faces too. And I serve as my teacher. Now I'm assistant professor at Colmex. I also see Omar Ozak, which is a Brown graduate. I'm currently working on crime topics and perceptions of inequality and social mobility in the context of Mexico.
Great. And I think Nicolas?
Hi, I'm Nicolas. I'm from Bolivia. My interests are education, economics of education. I'm currently working on the impacts of Venezuelan immigration and Colombian education. And I think that's it.
Great. And obviously, last but not least, Anna?
Yeah, great. So I'm Anna Azer. I am trained as a health economist, and all of my work focuses on understanding the intergenerational transmission of poverty in the US.
Super. Great.
And I'm very pleased to meet all of you.
Great. Thanks, Anna, for all the tips. I think this was very useful. And thanks everyone for participating and comment. Felipe, Omar, everyone else who gave advice. Camilo, this was very useful. I hope it was useful for everyone else, and hope to see you around now that we have connected.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.